ceremonies, Nathan Cassar.
Well, welcome to another captivating episode of the Justice Plan TV and podcast show, where we unveil the secrets to crafting unforgettable wedding experiences. As always, I'm your host, Nathan Cassar, and today we're diving deep into the world of luxury South Asian weddings with a trailblazing entrepreneur, Poonam Gururajan, the visionary behind the Maharani Diaries. Now, Poonam's journey from scientist, yes, I said that correctly, from scientist to wedding maven is nothing short of remarkable. What began as a passion project, her popular South Asian wedding blog has blossomed into a thriving business dedicated to making the wedding industry more inclusive and diverse. With over a decade of experience in hospitality, weddings, and events, Poonam brings a wealth of expertise to every celebration. But Poonam's story doesn't stop there. From growing up in a pharmacy to jet setting across the globe, her love for travel and exploration knows no bounds. With stints in Melbourne, Cork, and Sydney, Poonam's multicultural background fuels her passion for creating culturally rich and authentic wedding experiences. During our conversation, Poonam will share invaluable insights into the art of wedding planning, from mastering budgets and navigating cultural nuances to harnessing the power of social media for inspiration. She'll provide expert guidance on hiring vendors and offering quick tips for planning a wedding that's as stress-free as it is spectacular. So if you're ready to embark on a journey of wedding planning, wisdom, and inspiration, you're definitely in for a treat for this one. Poonam, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hello. Wow. I absolutely loved that intro.
Thank you. You're welcome. Well, you know me. We've worked together,
Yes.
and I certainly don't want to disappoint. Given
Thanks. Thanks for the intro.
our track record working together, it's been you were the one that introduced me to South Asian weddings.
Yes.
I wasn't even MC for the first time. I was just working for you, and I happened to the end of the day go, oh, I'm an MC too, and we're like, oh, really? And since then, it's been an absolute pleasure to work alongside you. Tell me, definitely. You're in this world, and obviously, look, we've had a lot of very diverse seasons so far, and there's been different influences, different nationalities mentioned, and so forth. But the world of South Asian weddings often seems a little bit elusive to Australians sometimes, at least speaking from our Australian base here, and so. I know this firsthand when I see Australians coming to a South Asian wedding and they're told, oh, you need to go and buy this particular outfit. So they follow it to a T and they come in and everything's sort of just a colorful rainbow blur to them. What's it like sort of being on the opposite side as someone who is immersed in that literally every day as part of your daily job? And obviously that factor that we have is not there, but what's it like being on the other side of it all?
Yeah, look, before I started this, I was bracing myself. Being Indian Australian, I grew up in Australia. I know a lot about our culture, obviously, and I know a lot about other cultures as well. So yeah, it's such a complicated thing to explain, and we could be here for a long time if I do go into the nitty-gritty. But South Asian weddings in particular are really crazy. There's so many traditions, so many cultures to cover in 3 days. Sometimes 5 days, sometimes 7 days.
And a lot of people in our audience right now going, are you kidding me? 1 day is enough for us. So
I know,
7,
right?
like that's just insane.
And now you can probably, if there are any vendors listening, can probably relate. Oh my gosh, so much. It's so overwhelming. But on the plus side, our heritage is so rich. So and especially if you come from different regions, there's so many different backgrounds to cover. In India alone, I can't even tell you how many religions, how many traditions there are. But also, whether you're Hindu, Muslim, Sri Lankan, there's so much to cover as a wedding planner, and for any vendor who's working on a South Asian wedding or an Indian wedding, I think it's a matter of getting to learn more about your couple, more about the traditions. You also need to learn about the rituals, because even for myself, every day it's a matter of learning a new thing, a new tradition that the family does. Every family does it differently. So whilst it is very overwhelming, it's also quite enriching, I think,
Mm.
to be a part of this particular niche part of the industry, South Asian weddings. And I just get a kick out of it. Yes, it's crazy, but at the end of the day, for me, it's about seeing those happy faces at the wedding, um, when the families are so relieved, because like I said, it's 3 or
7
4.
days are over.
Yeah, exactly. I have done a wedding that was 7 days before.
Yeah.
I wasn't working on all the days, but yeah, the boys' side of the family was doing something, and the girls' side of the family had things to do as well. So it's a lot to cover, but I think, I kind of become a part of their family whilst working on their wedding. So it's
Mm, mm.
fantastic, and we still keep in touch. Like, I still keep in touch with some of my couples, so that's the best part about it.
Oh, it sounds incredibly enriching and definitely not for the faint of heart, it
No,
sounds.
as you've seen.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely firsthand. I only had to deal with one of the days of the 5
Yeah,
or the 3. So,
yeah,
and certainly it has been a lot more whirlwind than some of the other typical weddings that I do. But it's
yeah,
obvious. It's always fantastic to,
yeah.
as you say, to see that look of relief, but also sort of that sense of pride that they've been through that journey together as a
Yes,
family, as a couple, and as a sort of a body of guests that have been able to be
yes.
around them to celebrate them. So it's really, really cool that you're a part of that. Tell me then, look, honestly, that's obviously going to cost a lot of money. You know, let's
Mhm,
be honest.
mhm.
You know, that's the elephant in the room. People are adding up, hang on, to our wedding or the one we're looking at doing, or maybe if you listen to
Yeah.
us after a wedding, you're like, okay, well, it costs this much. Then 3 times 5. Like, so when it comes to budget as a wedding
Yeah,
planner,
yeah.
you dealing with, a budget that perhaps needs to go a little bit further, perhaps a
Mm.
bigger set of money, but it has to go over 5 days, 3 days. What kind of best advice you can give to, obviously, even if people are just doing one wedding, of course, what's the best advice as a wedding planner you can give about how to best manage your budget and also how to make it best work for them?
Yeah, well, I think all of us can relate to this. We don't like talking about the B word.
Mm.
No one likes talking about it, and especially, like you said, for South Asian weddings or multi-day weddings, it's so much to work with, so many
Mm.
days to think about, so much money. So I think, and whether it is just a 1-day wedding or a 5-day wedding, I really think, the conversation needs to start between the couples
Mm.
and also their families. It does before they reach out to people like us, right?
Yeah,
Figure out,
true.
they need to figure out who can contribute where, and especially with multi-day weddings, I understand, that families are contributing a lot. The parents on both sides are contributing quite a bit of money here. It's not just the couple involved. It really depends whether the couple is contributing to the costs as well. Who knows? But it's really important to have that conversation at the beginning. Um,
Mm. Mm.
the worst thing is, though, about budgeting is no one knows what things cost.
Yeah.
Like services like, hiring an MC, hiring a wedding planner, a DJ, or a celebrant. Like, no one knows how much these services cost. So what I advise to couples who don't hire a wedding planner, for example, is they need to talk to vendors, book in consultations, send them an email, ask them for their services booklet. I know that it sounds like they're shopping around, but
Mm.
sometimes that does really help. Before they set a real budget, a realistic budget, they need to reach out to people, talk to the venue perhaps that they've booked in. The venue coordinator might know a lot about, average pricing for their vendors. They also have a recommended list of suppliers that they work with that they can refer to. I also say talk to family and friends who have had a wedding recently. Now, I know everyone's different, And different photographers, different MCs, different wedding planners charge differently. We all run our business very differently, and our overheads, our costs of running our business is all very different across the spectrum. So I think these people can all help you, like with advice and direct you, but a wedding planner in particular can help you understand where to allocate your funds effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's the best advice you can possibly ask for. I think it's one thing, yes, to go into the void alone, and I know I see a lot of stressed couples on Facebook groups in particular expressing sort of this extreme discomfort over the fact that it seems a little bit aloof and unknown sometimes. And that obviously there are a lot of different vendors who will price things differently even within the same niche. But so you're right, there is definitely a lot of expertise that you can employ and you can access from other people that you've perhaps already got in your orbit or in your network, and people you've already hired to really get a best sense of what would be able to fit into your budget. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, even someone like yourself, we can sit down to work out what are those priorities. What do you want at your wedding? And again, someone like you, for example, it depends on the number of hours, the number of days you're going to be working, for example. So we can't obviously put a price on that straight away. But booking in a chat with someone like yourself or myself, we can help guide the couple accordingly. Yeah,
absolutely. Have a chat. Let's talk. So you obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, you're dealing with a specific culture that a lot of people in Australia perhaps aren't so aware of. And so generally speaking, I'd love to chat to get your thoughts more on like cultural awareness in the industry as a whole, and sort of how does that play out being somebody who is a purveyor of to the mainstream, a lesser sort of exposed culture, but I wouldn't. There's plenty of South Asians in this country, of course, but in terms of how often people come in contact with it, there's a different story. So, how does sort of an overall sense of cultural awareness play a picture when you're doing your job and how you operate? Yeah.
So, as you mentioned at the beginning, the main reason why I started this this business is to make people more aware of not just our culture, but other cultures out there. It was really disheartening for me many years ago, before Instagram got big, to plan a wedding, an Indian wedding. And my husband and I found it extremely difficult. Now I think people are a little more aware of the traditions that are involved in a South Asian, like an Indian or a Sri Lankan or Muslim wedding. I think people are more aware because, yes, amazing. Instagram is amazing for that. Social media is great for that. We are now aware of the different things that go on at different weddings. But often I have faced difficulty so as a wedding planner now on the other side, I have still faced a lot of difficulty making venues or making vendors understand a bit about our background. And it's about understanding the values, the traditions, the beliefs of and being culturally aware of your couples, I think, shows that you care. Wedding industry professionals, they need to respect and honor diversity of these traditions, because I'm afraid there are a lot out there who don't take the initiative to learn more. And it doesn't give you a good look. I hate to be
so sad to hear that. No, but I appreciate you saying that, because I don't want any opinions on this show to sort of dance around it. Like I want our audience to really hear the truth, and I think that is it makes me sad, because obviously somebody who, like, you and I obviously work together, and that the first thing I do is, if I've never come across a tradition, or perhaps I need a bit of a refresher on it. We're the first people to sit down and like really get it out there again, so I can completely deliver that across the line. But it's makes me sad that you've encountered, still such a in 2024, such a lack of awareness and respect towards, just because it's not part of their mainstream, or they're a vendor that usually does tons of other types of cultures, or maybe sticks to a few sub niches, and all of a sudden now they're doing a South Asian one, and it's like, oh, that's a little too weird, so I'm just going to do what I normally do. I just find that so sad, and I hope that I appreciate that someone like yourself has taken upon yourself to be a sort of an industry leader in that sense. But what do you think it's going to take for people to is it that complicated to be culturally aware?
No, it's not. I mean, you've got Google.
Sure. Yeah.
And there are tons of articles, blogs, YouTube videos about, the different cultures and traditions. For example, I did a Chinese / Indian wedding 2 years ago. And I have attended tea ceremonies before, but I wanted to understand, a little bit more. Like attending one as opposed to working one is completely different. So, so I wanted to get to know a little bit more about the rituals and what do they mean. So I took the time out to learn more about the significance of a tea ceremony. So I think, so I think it's just taking the time to, like I said, taking the time to learn more about your clients, the backgrounds. I feel like if you disregard this, there's going to be, a risk of unintentionally offending people. So yeah, just being sensitive to the cultural differences helps everyone navigate, potential pitfalls and ensure everyone's really happy. You need to be inclusive, I'm afraid, in 2024. And there's so many interracial weddings taking place. Like I said, Indian, Chinese, and like you said, you really, as a vendor, you really take the time to get to learn about your client, which is fantastic.
It just
That's what
makes
we need to do.
sense.
Yeah,
It just
exactly.
makes sense. It's
Yeah,
the audience is going to better appreciate it. There's not going to be any
correct.
specifically awkward or perhaps much more
Yes,
confrontational moments between you as a vendor towards
correct.
guests, or even just towards the family and so forth. But we're meant to be there to create a perfect day, and so I think the best message we can provide out of this conversation at the moment is, pick vendors who, if this is important to you, that there are going to be significant amounts of cultural moments or
Yes.
traditions or other observations that need to be made, that you put it to them and really get a good temperature check on whether or not that vendor is going to very much
Mm,
pedestrian, just show up in the day and just wing it and
yeah,
cowboy it and see how it goes, or if
exactly.
they're really going to say, no, we're going to spend like 30 minutes really talking about it. Please send me, a document about what that means or something like that, which I've
Yeah,
heard many couples do. And for me, I personally feel that it's a lot better. I now know I'm not going to go and do something that I may not be aware of, or it's not part of my
yeah,
day to day. So no,
yeah,
empower us, but then also do pick people who are willing to also
yeah.
empower themselves
No,
as
that's
well.
great that you mentioned that too, actually. I think having your couples explain to you as well, if they are from different backgrounds and different walks of life, have them provide a workbook or a PDF if that's the case on the different steps that are going to be happening at their wedding. Yeah,
So
perfect.
you mentioned before social media and how it was a bit challenging because before
Mm,
Instagram and everything else, and you found it challenging with yourself and your husband to
yeah,
put something together back in the day. Now,
yes.
obviously, it's a little it's kind of, I would argue, the needle's gone in the other direction where it's so saturated now, and it's become
Yeah,
so like part of the fabric of human society, unfortunately, that now
yes.
there can often be too much to sift through on social media instead. So generally speaking, what are your best, because I know that you do your socials quite well, and you've got quite a good brand together, and you have to, obviously, to be in a niche environment like yourself, you have to thrive and you have to show off and you have to prove that you know what it takes. But for generally speaking, when couples are like, perhaps if they're inclined to search for their vendors purely, maybe perhaps 90% through social media, but it's still a bit of a minefield.
Mm.
What do you recommend their best way to approach it is, and what should they be looking for? What are some red flags?
Yeah, social media can be pretty exhausting. I actually find it exhausting myself. So much to keep up with on a daily basis. Trends are changing every day. Things are changing every day. The rules of social media are changing every day. Gosh, uh, what I can say for this is, look, there's pros and cons with social media. I think it's great. It's a great tool and inspiration for couples to like you said, majority of the leads, for example, I get is via Instagram. I think it's great for people like us to showcase our work and for couples to find inspiration through our work. And there's satisfaction for people like us, I think, when people when brides or grooms or anyone getting married sends us a DM and tells us they really liked that wedding, it looked incredible. That's just, yeah, it makes me feel so happy that, okay, I'm doing something right. I'm putting out good content for and inspiring content for my couples. But on the downside, I feel like it's also pretty bad, social media. Uh, I find that there are a lot of brides and grooms out there sometimes who try to be people that they're not. So I guess key piece of advice there: try not to be someone that you're not. Um, and I always tell, like, my brides and grooms, try to think about, like, what it is that's important to you. Don't see what Tom, Dick, and Harry are doing on Instagram. Uh, don't try and plan a wedding that's not reflective of you. Um, don't hire the string quartet if you don't like classical music. Um, yeah, and I think it's really tricky to find that balance, and a lot of people fall into that comparison trap. I've even fallen into the comparison trap, mind you, and that's when I just take breaks, because it's dangerous, it's unhealthy, especially when you're planning a wedding. You really need to look after your mental health, I feel. It's yeah, so I think it's good and it's bad for many reasons, but I think, yeah, you need to strike. There needs to be some sort of balance there. Don't get all your inspiration from social media.
I totally agree with you there, particularly when you
Yeah,
said about the comparison game. I
yeah,
found that I have had some previous weddings in the past where decisions were made not from a decently structural point of view, or like that was something that really truly made sense to them and
yeah,
the vibe of whatever they were going for.
yeah,
There was a lot of the time, I would encounter some moments where, yeah, I was thinking, I feel like this is just being done because of TikTok. And so I had to put it into the structure. And of course, I'm not going to say anything on the day. I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I'm just going to make it
yeah,
happen. It's what they want. It's what I do. But certainly I knew that it felt tacked on as opposed to part of the process and really sort of an essence of the evening or the day that really made sense. So yeah, I think that's fantastic advice to say, but like you said, if you don't like string classical music, but you saw it on something else and that makes it elegant now. Well, don't do it, because it's just like it's the cringy part of the day that you're not really going to enjoy that much, even though you think, oh, that's going to make the Vogue, head page of the magazine, like so. Just make it yours, and if it happens to make a magazine, that's fantastic. And if it doesn't, well, then it's more private and it's for yourself anyway. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, I
Gosh.
know that's fantastic advice. Speaking of advice, actually, I got some quick questions for you.
Yes,
I would love to hear your top 3 quick pieces of advice when it comes to planning a wedding.
yes.
So go.
Okay. So yeah, so my top pieces of advice for couples planning a wedding, or anyone planning a wedding, I suggest that at the very beginning you need to set clear expectations. Uh, figure out what exactly, figure out what exactly do you want. How do you want the day to look, or days? You really need to sit with your partner and your families. Especially with South Asian weddings, as I said, it's a family affair. So many families to deal with, so many relatives to deal with, and sometimes you can't avoid it. Uh,
Mm.
take that time to sit down, make sure you're all on the same page. Unfortunately, there might be some arguments here and there, but that's just part of it at the beginning. And then like those priorities. What are those priorities for you? What is important to you? What do you want to spend money on? Is it the food that's really important to you? Is it all about choosing an amazing photographer? What are those key things that you want? And that's all part of setting clear expectations. Next, I'd say you really need to be realistic. And like I said, social media can be deceiving. You don't know what goes on behind the scenes. Don't try and do everything on your own as well, because that can lead to decision fatigue. And then lastly, I'd say just have fun, be yourself during the entire journey. You're not going to be engaged for long. You really need to savor the journey. Take that time to look after yourself in between the planning.
Perfect. I love it. I don't think you can go wrong with those three guiding stars of planning advice. That's fantastic. All right. Before we go, because I could talk, you and I could talk forever. We usually do offline. So, which for good reason, of course. So whether it's about a wedding or just talking about life. So I have a couple of questions for you I'd like to ask. One being, what is your number one, top of mind, whatever comes to you straight away, top trend in the industry for 2024 that you're seeing?
Top trend. Wow. I can see that there are a lot of social media content creators out there.
Oh, yes.
Speaking of social media, I can see that a lot of, and I've had a couple hire one before. They're good if you want photos and videos straight away. If you're impatient and you just can't wait, or you just love sharing things on social media, then hire a content creator. I think they're great. It's fantastic to have all that extra footage without having to worry about your family or your friends you taking out their phones. It just looks so bad in photos, to be honest. So I feel like having a content creator is really, really, it's a really good idea. Whoever invented it, I think it's from America. I think it's brilliant. So I can see that. Yeah, I can see that trending for a while.
I don't think that they're going away. I had a conversation with somebody online in a Facebook group, sort of an industry one, a couple of weeks back, and I think it was a videographer, brought it up, and there was an interesting conversation about sort of how that's really interacting with amongst the industry between us vendors. But the greater conversation was, look, they're not going anywhere. It's definitely something that has come up. It's not just a fad. It has a place. It sort of has fit a specific gap in the industry and part of a wedding that hasn't been filled yet. So it's an option. And so couples should be considering it. And as you said, you did display the appropriate pros and cons of it all. So I think, perfect trend picked out from that. And the last question I have for you is, do you prefer an indoor wedding or an outdoor wedding?
I'm going to divide a lot of people on this one. I'd have to say indoor, I'm afraid. And a lot of vendors can probably relate, especially stylists. Yes, for all sorts of reasons. The climate is changing. I hate to be preachy. It's so hard to predict what any day is going to be like. And I'm sorry, Bureau of Meteorology, you're getting it completely wrong right now.
No wrong.
It's just so true, right? It's so much easier planning an indoor wedding.
I agree with you. Yeah, definitely. Not having to worry about a wet weather plan, not having to worry about where they're going to go or the photos. You're right. No, 100%. It's I think Yes, I totally agree with you. Couldn't fault you there. Well, Poonam, look, honestly, as I said, I'd love to chat with you more, but certainly we'll just have to allow people to imagine our conversation because we've run out of time here officially. But where can people find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, so the Maharani Diaries on Instagram, YouTube. I'm pretty active on YouTube too. Facebook. It's all the Maharani Diaries. You won't miss it.
Excellent, and I do encourage people to go and read Poonam's blog in particular, the blog that started
Yes,
it all
Maharani
for
Diaries.
her.
Yeah, thank you. The blog.
Absolutely, no, of course, no, I got you covered. No, it's definitely a font of information, and even if you just obviously if you're not in anywhere associated with having a South Asian wedding, I'd highly recommend you read it and check it out and sort of see sort of a different side of things. You might get some inspiration. I know one thing that is being inspired by South Asian weddings right now is color. Color is speaking of another trend this year. Color is coming back in huge ways, and South Asian weddings have never been nothing but color. So it's nice that we're now starting to get this infusion of the entire rainbow, as opposed to pastel. Nothing against pastel, but it's nice that the colors coming back. Definitely, I'd highly recommend you check out her blog in the meantime for some inspiration, regardless if you are having a South Asian wedding or not. Poonam, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your time today, and I look forward, as always, thoroughly to working with you again in the future.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your time, Nathan. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Just As Planned Wedding Podcast. Please like and subscribe to let me know that you want more videos just like this one. And of course, please follow us on our socials at Just As Planned Wedding on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for more expert insights to help your wedding go just as planned.